Hello, Internet. My name's Emil, and today I'm going to be showing you some stuff that I like to do when it comes to processing drums and layering them and things like that. Um, so, in a nutshell, drum layering is the process of combining multiple drum hits into one kind of cohesive thing. Um, there's loads of reasons that you might do that. It might be that you've got one drum hit which isn't quite doing what you want it to do, and rather than having to go and find a whole new sample that's absolutely perfect, you can start adding layers and processing them individually to kind of craft something that's a bit closer to what you need. Um, you can also use it for what I'm going to be using it for today, which is to beef up sort of drum breaks from sampled from old vinyl records and stuff like that. I think this is quite a good example of ways that you can process drums, because when you're working on a break, there are so many different things that you have to take into account. So it might be the individual hits and it might be layering them, but also it's going to be looking at the whole kind of groove and the drum break as a whole and thinking about how to get everything working together kind of holistically. So I've tried to do this a couple of times, and every time I do this tutorial, it just gets really, really long. So I'm going to try again this time. I'm going to try and keep it quite short and sweet. I can show you some of the stuff that I've done already. So the one that I've just been working on today is this think break. So you'll hear the original break first, and then you'll hear the processed version. So that's one example. And, it's kind of down to you as well when you're doing stuff like this, how close to the original you remain, how much of that kind of the sound and timbre and tone of everything that you want to preserve. I've obviously gone quite far here away from the original. I've tried to keep the bits that I like about it, and there's some stuff you can do there with things like reverb and stuff to kind of make it still feel like it's in a room and, it's a recording of a thing. There's some other ones I can show you too, like this one. And there's another one here, a bit slower this time. So yeah, there's loads of stuff you can do, and I think the thing that's common between all of the examples that I've just showed you is that what I've ended up with is not really so much a break anymore, and I think the think break is probably a really good example of this. So this is the break over here, and here's the break that I've done a lot of processing on. But further to that, we've got isolated kick drum, snare drum, and actually, I've added some tops here as well. So I can isolate these things. You can have a little listen and see how they're all kind of contributing. So what shall I start with? Let's just solo the break. So there's a load of bits there that I've ducked out to make room for the kick and the snare. The kick and the snare are still using the original drum hits, but they've just been layered up with other things. In some cases, they'll sound very different. So in the kick drum, I'm only using this tiny, tiny little slice of the transient of the original. And then I add my kind of weight layer. Similarly with the snare, these are just the original hits. There it is. And they sound pretty good, but I also layered Serum on there as well, which is doing a little kind of extra sort of mid-range kind of tonal thing. And then there's this extra layer which just adds a bit of top. And the Serum thing on its own sounds like this. So then I've also just added these tops in as well. The top end of the think break has these tambourines with loads of resonant frequencies and kind of harshness in there. As soon as you start distorting it and processing it too much, that stuff really starts to jump out. So I've tamed that a little bit and I've added these hats instead. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here, and I've got some pretty crazy long effects chains and routing and stuff. But I figure today I'm just going to try and, as I said, before I started waffling for ages, I'm going to try and do this quite short and sweet. So I've got this break here. And I'm just going to try and do some stuff with it and see what comes out, really. First, I'm just going to bounce it. This is a Rex loop at the moment, so I'm not going to be able to kind of stretch things and stuff until I bounced it. And then I want to make it match up with the grid. It's going to make it much easier for me to sort of layer things up and get stuff in the right place. I like to have a little bit of groove, so I'm thinking maybe let's listen to it. It's quite a sort of swung beat as it is. I'm going to go 40%. And then analyze it. Let's see where Studio One thinks all these transients are. A little bit all over the place. Right, so I'm just going to neaten this up quickly and just try and get all of these kind of transients hitting right on the grid. All right, so I've just done half of it in the interest of moving quickly. So let's just chop that down. I'm just going to work with this section. I've not been too precise with all of it. I've just tried to get things in the ballpark. I'm going to work a bit faster than this in tempo, I mean. So you notice like a lot of these hits have kind of turned red and scary because I've stretched them a lot. But I don't mind because I'm about to bump it up to 170, let's say. So that's pretty much, yeah, that'll do. Let me just chuck a click on it. Sounds all right to me. It's not perfect, but it will do. Right, so now I've got this here. I want to take a look at it in a spectrum analyzer and just get a feel for kind of where everything sits frequency-wise. So let's have a look. So we've got a nice deep kick, kind of 70, 80 hertz. The snare's kind of clangy and high. It looks like our snare fundamentals just nearing 300 hertz. Yeah, like 270, I guess. So what I'm going to do is the processing that I do here, and if I end up layering things, I'm not going to deviate too much from what's already there. So if our snare's hitting at sort of 270 hertz for its fundamental, then I will try to, any layers I add, I'm going to try to keep that kind of tuning and just have everything sort of still working together. So first things first, I'm just going to chop out the main hits. I'm going to basically just chop out the kick and the snare, and I'm going to copy them onto separate tracks so that I can sort of process them in isolation, and then we'll work them back into the break afterwards. So I've got some channels set up here already for them. So I'm going to copy this kick here, that kick there, these snares. And I mean, something I'm noticing already, these have really long tails on them. And there's lots of percussion in the break that's kind of overlapping with those tails. So like, for example, here, that kick is still kind of trailing off a little bit, but there's a hi-hat that hits here. So we're gonna use the break itself in the background to kind of keep gluing everything together with preserving those tails and everything. Although there are some techniques I can show you to kind of control that a little bit more. But for the layers that I'm using for the individual hits, I'm fine with them just cutting off and being very abrupt. So I'm going to mute this break now and just listen to the individual hits. Right. So let's start with just the kick. Now, this kick's a bit flabby and not very defined. So, I mean, the main thing I definitely want to add here is a bit of weight. I want to add some more low end and some punch and stuff to it. I can have a look at it in Pro Q. There is the makings of a sort of quite hard kick there. I might try and keep this. The problem seems to be more up here somewhere. Right, so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to, not low shelf, I'm going to high shelf it. You know what? I've changed my mind. I've just changed my mind. I'm not going to do that at all. I'm going to try and find something with some nice punch, and I don't want to sit here trying to polish shit for ages. This is what I was talking about, keeping things fast. Right, so a really surefire bet is a 909 kick. Usually they tend to just have everything in the right place. Right. That'll do nicely. So let's get Pro Q2 back up. I'm just going to use it here just to have a look. Right, so there's what we have there. Oh wait, I've got this keyboard thing turned on. Right, so 129 hertz is not the fundamental. That's kind of is there's not really such thing as a pure fundamental with a acoustic thing. But anyway, I think our fundamental is probably more like down here, 85, 86, and this is kind of somewhere that the pitch envelope in the 909 kick will travel through anyway. So our 909 kick is a little bit deeper. I'm just going to pitch it up. That's more like it. Turn it down so I'm not clipping. I'll just listen to them together. So I don't need any of the low end on the original one. I'm effectively just replacing it. I'm going to go quite a steep slope. And I don't need this really long tail. And I might also just fade in the beginning of this a little bit, let the transient through. And I think I want to cut more away from this one as well. So I like this kind of low mid-range here because it sounds quite organic, and it gives it a bit of kind of character. I can hear that fade, so I don't like that. I pull it in a bit. In fact, I think part of the issue here is that this isn't actually starting right on the beat. That sounds quite good. An important thing when you're doing stuff like this is making sure that, I mean, it kind of doesn't apply so much here because I've high passed the original kick. But if I hadn't and I was trying to get these things to work together, you would want to make sure that the phase is aligned, and the low end especially. So these peaks and troughs here in the low end, you would want to kind of match them up. Don't use this as an accurate representation of that though, because this is just showing the waveform for the original file, and I've already sort of squashed this and stretched it. You see how that waveform is shrinking and stuff? Well, it's not changing pitch, so actually that wavelength shouldn't have changed. So this is very much just like a visual representation, and the better way to do it is to use something like this where you've got an oscilloscope. So you can see, although it's very small at the moment, there's the low end of the waveform there, and then this kind of scraggly bit at the top is our initial transient. And the level's a bit all over the place, so it's actually like quite a quiet transient at the beginning. Low end frequencies carry a bit more weight; they have more energy in them, so they tend to be louder anyway. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some saturation and kind of beef this up a bit. So I've got both of these kick layers routed into this kick bus, and I'm going to do some processing here. All right, so in the interest of expediency, I think that will do for the moment. Let's see where we're at. Oh, and I've got another one, of course, but these are different samples, bear that in mind. So I've chopped these from different places in the break, and what that means is that they're going to behave kind of differently. So let's actually just have a listen to this one. That sounds okay to me. I'm quite happy to just leave that as it is for the moment. So, let's see where we're at. Now you notice something, we got some phasing going on. So these sound okay together, but they don't sound great with the break itself. And that is because, especially with this first hit, because I moved it around a bit, I changed I sort of nudged it a little bit forward to close up this gap here. But because I've done that, it's now out of phase with the original. So what I'm actually going to do is just duplicate this back up there, drag it out a bit, and I can get rid of that fade. Let's see how that sounds. There is something about this second one that I don't like. It's up here. Let's see how this sounds with everything else. I'm going to turn this, yeah, that breaks off. All right. I think I need to move this one back a bit as well. It's working a bit better for me. And I, to be honest, would usually probably be much more kind of precious about these things and be making more careful decisions, but I'm trying to just run through this kind of quickly. Right. And they sound quite different, but I quite like that because it's going to make them fit in with the rest of the break more, and it's just going to sound a bit more like you have a bit more variation. It can make it sound a bit more natural, so I'm going to just keep that how it is. So let's have a listen to the snare. So the snare, there's lots of mid-range stuff happening. Let's have a look on here. So there's that fundamental right up there. What is that? Is about 270. There's nothing in the way of top end. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some dynamic processing. I'm going to try and just make this a bit snappier, and then add a top end layer, maybe also a fundamental layer, but we'll see how we get on. So I'm going to use Pro MB for this. And I'm not actually going to be using this for compression. What I'm going to be doing is expansion. So I've soloed this band, which is a sort of wide band, which includes the fundamental frequency, which is kind of the loudest, lowest sort of note, I guess, within the signal. So I'm going to switch this to expand mode. I'm going to drop the attack and release right down to the bottom, hard knee, though it doesn't really matter, and bump up the ratio to something quite high. I'm also going to give it some look ahead, a few milliseconds, and I'm going to drop the range all the way down to -30. So what this does is it means that when the signal crosses this threshold, it's essentially a gate. So you'll hear nothing until the amplitude is loud enough to cross this threshold, at which point it will let the signal poke through. But because I've got zero release as well, it means that as soon as the signal drops below that threshold, it gets completely cut off again. So what I'm going to do is just tweak the release as I'm listening to just kind of get a little bit more of a tailback. Not much, that's enough. And now let's listen to this band. So I'm going to focus on this kind of pokey mid-range bit. This is the bit I really, really want to tighten up a lot. So we're going to go high ratio, lots of range, 0 attack, 0 release. Bit of look ahead again. Oh, I did that on the wrong band. Ooh. So that's done what I wanted for the mid-range. I'm leaving the top end alone. I've just disabled the compression here with expansion. Still not a fan of this low end, actually. I think I'm going to use a layer on the low end. So I'm going to add a snare layer track, and let's find a nice snare. And I want it to be something that's not too... I'll tell you what, in fact, let's not do that. I want it to be something that's not too low and kind of duffy and stuff. I'm actually going to use Serum, because I know that really all I want is just that fundamental, which was, what was it? 3, just check. See on here. Just around here. Yeah, it was 270, wasn't it? Okay, fine. I'll re-enable that. Pro MB. Okay, so we get a sine wave out. Now I do actually need to just check what note that is, because I have no idea. About C3-ish. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is, so first of all, I'm going to turn that off. I'm just going to bring the level right down and add this envelope. I'll make it nice and short and snappy, a couple 100 milliseconds, just under, should do it. I add another envelope here, which is going to go to the pitch, and I'm going to do that for both of these. Go to my matrix, make sure that's unidirectional, and yes, I'm going to make this super short. 40 milliseconds will probably do it. And for this, I want to find something that's just got a bit of roughness. No, it doesn't sound anything like a drum yet. Okay. So I'm going to FM this from oscillator B, and I'm also going to automate that, or modulate it, I should say, with quite a sharp envelope again. I'll tune this up a bit. So I'm just messing with the timings here for the pitch envelope and this FM envelope as well, just to try and get it sounding kind of punchy and just snappy. Sometimes I would add some noise here, but this is there's some high-end information in here anyway, so I don't think I need it. Let's see how it sounds with the original hit. Not bad. Okay, add some distortion. So now listening to these together, I can start to hear the sound of a kind of cohesive snare drum. There's still some stuff in the high mids here that I don't really like. So I'm going to do a bit of EQ on the original layer. It's that bit. Okay, now I've got both of these running into this snare bus, similar to what I had with the kick. So I'm going to just take a Saturn II, and I like clean tube on here because if you boost it quite a lot, it still doesn't kill your transients. I might go for some distortion as well. I think this second hit still kind of wants to come back a little bit. Right. Now, just to save myself pain later with phasing problems and stuff, I'm just going to move this back up here as well. For that fade. What have I done? Oh, I selected everything. Cool. Okay. I'm trying to resist adding another layer to this, but there's something about it that's just not really hitting right. Let's see if this might help. So there's some attacks here, which might do the job. Right. I think I want to shorten down these kick layers more as well. Okay, I'm going to try not going down too many rabbit holes or getting tunnel vision and stuff. So this is it all together. Right, so now this is where I really want to start working the original break back into things again. So I'm going to do that kind of expansion thing again with the break. You don't have to do this. I'm doing it mainly to just shorten some of the tails and get things a bit choppier and punchier. It's really up to you how you use it. You could go the complete opposite direction and kind of smash everything and get it really kind of pumping and roomy and stuff. But I'm going to go in the opposite direction because that's just what I feel like doing. Right, so expand, high ratio, no knee, look ahead, 0 attack, 0 release, range all the way down. Want it just poking over, not too much. Alright, let's have a listen to the next band. Right, and again. Now, one of the nice things about this break is that really clangy kind of snare sound, and I don't think I really want to lose that, but I'm just going to see what happens when I start doing this anyway. I can tweak the release to let more and more of it out. And the top end is lovely here, actually. I think I'm going to go the opposite direction for the tops. I'm going to actually just add a little bit of compression instead. So that's going to be like a kind of, I want that to be kind of like a silky sort of layer that just smothers everything else. All right, let's see how we sound all together. So there's one other thing I want to do with the dynamics, and that is a bit of sidechain compression. So I'm going to get this another Pro MB here. This one's just going to be for the kick. So let's go from like maybe about 200 hertz. Again, range right down, attack right down, release right down, high ratio as well. This time we're going to leave it on compress, and I'm going to add a sidechain input from my kick bus. So if I solo this and we listen in. Oh, you know what I haven't done? External sidechain. So all this is doing is it's just meaning that the break is ducking out when our kick hits. And I can be really aggressive with it as well, because actually a lot of the low end information in the break I don't really need anymore. So that'll do fine. And I'm going to get another Pro MB, and I'm going to do the same thing again for the snare. So I'm setting up two bands here. I'm going to use this bottom one for the transient, and I'm going to use this top one for just a bit of that high end snap. I want this one to especially to be quite subtle, because I really don't want to overdo it. Right, so I'm going to focus on this one first. Right, so that's working quite well, but our snare's a little bit quiet. So quick and easy and dirty K clip. So I'm just clipping a couple of dB. Cheap level. I think actually just to reinforce the sidechainy bits as well, you know, I'm just going to do this kind of manually as well. I'm just going to fade the beginnings of the kicks and snares in the break. Now, if I was doing this properly again, I'd be taking a while to kind of time these things right and looking at an oscilloscope and all of that stuff, but for now this will do. This click up here just is a bit unnatural. Maybe a bit of saturation. No, it's just too sharp. So let's have a look if I can use the transient just from the layer and basically take away a lot of the high end here. Kind of works. And now I think for the actual break itself, I might just high pass it. Cool. So this is kind of taking shape a little bit. Lots of niggly little details, but I'm not going to worry about those too much for the moment. I am going to saturate more on the break itself. Squash the dynamics a bit. It really helps kind of push all the sort of in-between roomy bits out. This is the other thing, these tambourines again. Maybe it's just me, I'm not a fan of tambourines, but this is just so harsh. and that just sounds nicer. So I think I'm going to add a top layer again. So I'm just going to grab some hats. Smooth that all out a little bit. And then I will duplicate this. Chuck these ones on the offbeat, and I'm just going to give them a bit of attack. Shorten them up a bit. I'll drop the tuning a bit as well, just to make it sound less like the same sample twice. Right, see how we're doing. This synth is a bit crap. The snare overall as well, probably what I would do, or what I might do later, is work out a way to get a nice kind of harmonic layer on that fundamental. So just on this sample, that can kind of mirror that clang that's in the original break. Because that's really quite nice, and it's something that would be nice to kind of preserve through this if possible. But for now I can't be bothered. Right. So we've got our drums, and I keep doing this, but I'm just gonna add saturation again. The reason I keep using saturation and clipping and stuff like that is it's a really good way of filling out the harmonic content of the break, or any sound really. It adds harmonics and distortion and stuff, but it's also soft clipping effectively, and so it's allowing you to get a whole lot more level out of the sound and the signal. You can make things much louder. So clipping, saturating first, just to round out the sound and also get a bit more level, and then clipping afterwards really lets you kind of like double down on really like pushing stuff and getting it very, very big and fat, and allowing it to compete with other sounds in a busy mix, at least depending on what kind of music you're doing. If it's like, you know, contemporary kind of electronic music, then this kind of thing is really helpful. The thing to be careful of when you're doing stuff like this, clipping and saturation, little bits of distortion will sneak up on you if you're not really paying attention, especially in the low end. And once your low end starts to lose definition, it's really hard to get it back. So less is more, really, and I may have just overdone it a bit, to be honest, but it'll do for now. Right. So let's chuck this break onto... Actually, let's get the original break out. I've got it in the project pool, and we can do a little bit of a comparison. So here's what we started with. Nope, that's not what we started with. I need to route that to main so it's not going through the drum bus. There we go. And maybe if I just put this at its original tempo as well, that might help. 113. Oh, God damn it. It's a Rex loop, so it's just playing at my tempo. Drum loops, breaks. There's the WAV. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I may do some more to this later. But anyway, there you go. So I've covered a bunch of stuff: EQ, saturation, compression, expanding, dynamic stuff, clipping, whatever else. I hope you found this useful. This is just how I do things. I'm sure there are better ways of doing a lot of this stuff. But let me know what you think, and enjoy. See you later.